Welcome everyone to a special episode of In the Paint Show, episode 169. Today we are highlighting the 2003-2004 Preseason FAB 50 rankings. I am your host, Chelsea Hopkins, and I am here with Ronnie Flores and Ani Umana, and we're going to break down the best high school teams across the country. We're going to touch on as many teams and as many players as we can in the next hour and a half. Who are the best teams in the country? I'll have Ronnie and Ani on the hot seat all show to let you know.
Sure.
Last year was pretty interesting. A lot happened in the preseason. In the 2022 FAB 50 champ, Duncanville was stripped of its 2021 title by the UIL. Donda Academy closed. Players were transferring like Mikey Williams. This year so far, it's been a bit quieter, but there's a big rule change that will affect the high school basketball going forward. So let's get into that. Ronnie, can you tell us about the new foul shot rules and the elimination of the one-on-one?
Yeah, no doubt. Glad to be with you guys. Yeah, a little bit more calm this season as far as the preseason. Obviously, we did a lot of homework, me and Ani and the teams. But yeah, the main thing I think people are not really grasping, and I've been talking to coaches, is how this foul rule is going to affect the game, the flow of the game. It could be a more free-flowing game with elimination of the one-and-one, because the fouls reset each quarter, Chelsea. As you know, it's a 8-minute quarters in high school. So it used to be on the 7 per half, you're shooting the one-and-one, then you go to the double bonus at 10. Well, that is gone. There's no more one-and-one, and there's fouls reset after each quarter. So then you're shooting on the 5th foul, right? So I guess for the teams, they could be super aggressive and then adjust to the refs and see how the refs are calling it. But again, Ani, as you know, we've seen many games over the years. The one-and-one has helped a lot of teams get back into the game. If I'm on a run, if I'm going an 11-0 run, 9-0 run, 13-0 run, we foul. I'm expecting Dude to miss that first free throw and us to get free throw.
Right.
What do you think there, Ani, as far as that?
Man, I think it's just all dependent upon how the referees are calling it.
Sure.
I think it can be a foul fest. I think it can be a free throw fest. Like, I think games can be decided off free throws. But if the refs kind of let them play, then, I mean, in high school games, you see how wild and physical it can be. So, if it's 7 foul calls in total called in the first quarter, we got 4 minutes left, guys are going to be shooting a bunch of free throws. And I don't think anyone's really come to see that. So I just think it's all dependent on how the refs are going to ref those games, if they let them play a little bit more. But to me, I feel that, there could be a lot of free throws, a lot of double bonus, I guess, just free throws just taking place, especially if the games are getting called tight.
What do you guys think prompted this rule change? I mean, when I listen to you guys talk and hear about it, it sounds to me like it's going to slow the game down. So what's the purpose of making such a big change right now?
Ask Ronnie that. I don't know.
I think, Chelsea, in the second and fourth quarter, the game could flow better because, again, you're resetting right after the 8 minutes. You're resetting. You're back to 0, so you can be super aggressive again. And then there's no, you get a foul and then you take the ball out of bounds. So it could flow better. The game could go a little faster. But again, the stronger team is, as to Ani's point, can adjust to the refs, and the stronger team, if they're ahead, if they're a good coach, they're going to stay ahead. How are you going to come back? Chelsea, if you go to the line and it's a pressure-packed situation and you got the second shot, you're going to make the first shot more than, you know what I'm saying? The pressure's off. If the one-and-one is on and your team is struggling, you guys are out of timeouts, you're tired, you're going to miss that shot a lot. People count on, I talked to some coaches, they count on people missing that one-and-one. So that's gone. I just think it favors the stronger team. I think you're right. It could be, a lot of fouls, maybe early, maybe until people adjust. I think everybody's going to have to adjust, Chelsea. The fans are going to adjust. They're not going to know right away. They're going to say, wait a minute, I thought we're in the bonus. They're not going to know. I bet you even some refs are going to be like, oh, yeah, I forgot we're at these rules. So what it did, Chelsea, was it mirrors now the college women's game. The women's game has these rules where you reset after each quarter. So I guess it's I don't know who decided if they wanted to make these changes, but we're going to find out, what it affects. So it should be very interesting.
Yeah, we're definitely going to see how the players and the teams are able to adjust to this as the season kicks off. But before we get into our rankings a little bit, let's just talk about the history of rankings. You two have done a fabulous job of just, getting teams together and kind of giving us a Fab 50 year after year. So I just want to get into a little bit of the process of what goes into that. Ronnie, can you talk about just the ranking system before we start pulling up our teams?
Yeah, no doubt. Obviously you go by the previous year a bit, and history makes a difference. If a team has track record, plays a tough schedule, you see some of the bullet points and highlights here. I got to play a strong schedule. I'm not going to put you too high, especially nowadays. There's events all over the place. Chelsea, we're going to talk about these teams later. By Thanksgiving, teams are already playing huge games. So you own a head-to-head victory is often key. And then I have some key contacts. Obviously, Ani's one of them. In terms of, statewide, regional wide, we have 5 main regions. And you have to earn a high ranking in your state and region. And then people are probably saying, root for your rivals. What does that mean? Well, if you play a team and you beat a really good team, ranked team, you want them to keep winning. So we don't have to spend too much time on that. But basically, if you beat a team, you want that team to finish undefeated the rest of the way after you beat them, right? 31-1 and only a loss to your team. So obviously you'll both be ranked. And then as far as this is the one Ani likes, as far as having big time players, if you have a big recruit on your team, well, then you're going to get invited to the Thanksgiving Hoop Fest. You're going to get invited to the Hoopsgiving. You're going to get invited to City of Palms. That's how you get on TV, national TV game. That's how you get invited to big events. So if you have a big recruit on your team, that should give you more opportunity to win a big game.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's get right into it, guys. I want to start out with our teams 31 through 50. Obviously it's really difficult when you start ranking these teams at the end of the pack, but you guys were able to do so. So I just want to get the list going, and I want to talk a little bit about how we got here. Ani, I'll start with you. As the list is scrolling, does anybody stand out to you? Any team that, is loaded with talent, or just a team that catches your eye right off the bat?
Yeah, definitely South Grand Prairie. We got at 45. Obviously, I'm a Texas guy, but they're a team that last year, it was a lot of underclassmen last year, a lot of 225s and a few 226s that were kind of leading. So, that leads to inconsistency, especially when majority of your top guys are underclassmen. But this year, those guys have made a leap. They're older. South Grand Prairie's been really good in the fall leagues, and I think that they have a chance of winning a state title this year. And they have a chance of being the best team in the state of Texas this year. Loaded with those guys are just older, like Cam Carroll, Cam Paul, and we'll kind of go into more. I'll go into more about them, but I think South Grand Prairie is a team that can definitely, rise up and really shock some people nationally this year.
I see Sierra Canyon on the list as well. We talked about them a lot in the Fab show last year. So they lost quite a bit of talent. Also, Bryce James has switched schools. Sure. Ronnie, talk to me a little bit about Sierra Canyon at 46. Do you see them being formidable this season, or what do you think?
Yeah, I look at Sierra Canyon, and I've got to tell you the truth, Chelsea. A month ago, I don't think they would have been in these rankings. Then you look at them in the fall, and you look at their roster. Justin Pippen is just getting really good, really fast. He's one of the most improved players in the country. Justin, obviously, Scotty's son. They have a really good, strong team around him, meaning physical players. A little bit of the limelight is off, like you said, Chelsea. I think it's even a little bit of a relief in terms for some of the players, perhaps. They're just getting after it. They play really good team defense. Kids like Bryce Cofield, and like we said, Justin, they got some size on their team, and they got some real power. They just get really after it, and I think they did good in the fall. Some of the other guys they got, like Noah Williams, he's a team first player, 6'6", 224, and they got Majok Chol, who's a center. So if he plays well, he's a real rim protector, 7-footer. They can be really, really good. They want some key fall league games. So be honest with you, I was looking at a few teams in Arizona, and Sierra Canyon put it on them in some big games. And like I said, I just think the key has been Justin's improvement. He's kind of like his brother, who was a 2019 Ballislife All-American game he played. Justin's just coming on late, and you see some of the highlights there for Justin. Even in these highlights, I think he's even a little bigger and stronger than some of these highlights. He's just playing really good here in the fall. Again, like I said, they beat some teams that were toward the bottom of the rankings, and they would be now the 5th team from the CIF ranks, meaning the California Interscholastic Federation. We'd have them 5th, and we obviously have Roosevelt at 44, so they'd be the 4th team. So that obviously we have 3 teams higher. But Like I said, Chelsea, about a month ago, I don't think they're in, but they played really good in the fall. I think they have a chip on the shoulder. I think, like you said, they want to prove that, hey, we're a good team. We're not just kind of about the flash and dash. We got some players. So, we'll see how they do.
Nice. I like that assessment. Okay, let's go down into the mid 30s a little bit. Couple names that are sticking out to me. Hudson Catholic out of New Jersey at number 36. Perry, Arizona at number 33. Talk to me about these teams. Are there any guys on these teams that are going to make some noise this season?
Yeah, you definitely go into Perry, Koa Pete, USA basketball. I mean, just countless of it. I mean, 5-star prospect in 225, just a big, strong forward, about 6'8". Is versatile. As you see him here, just playing above the rim through contact, playing through it, can really pass it, especially when he kind of gets like 12, 15 feet out. Really like his feel for the game, his physicality, strength, good athlete, good enough vertical athlete. And then just, I just think he's a matchup problem in high school, and I think he'll be a matchup problem in college. Kobe P comes from a family that actually, is mainly football, right? So he's actually the basketball one, and you can just definitely see that he just comes from an athletic bloodlines, right? And just get a lot done on the court. So him, being on that Perry team, really, it's a big, they have other pieces around them, but it's a big reason that you put them at 33.
Yeah, and now follow up on that, Chelsea, is I mentioned those other Arizona teams, mainly Desert Mountain and Sunny Slope. They're just got a little bit younger players. And I mentioned Sierra Canyon kind of put it to them. Sierra Canyon is strong, and that's where Perry is. They have a little bit more upperclassmen, 224s. And then obviously with Koa Pete, one of the better players in the country. There's not going to be too many times where he's not the best player on the court.
Right.
And I think that makes a difference. And they're the number one team. And not everybody would agree with that. They'd say some of those other teams in Arizona may be as good, and they might be right. But what the difference is, Chelsea's, they're going to have the opportunity. They're going to play Harvard Westlake and Archbishop Stepinac, and I'll just kind of give it away. Those two teams are ranked higher. We haven't talked about them, but they're ranked high. So they're going to play them at Hoop Hall West, and that's going to be right at the end of November. So they're going to be right away. They're going to be able to show themselves if they're going to be on that ranking. And then they play also in the La Schwab right after Christmas, which will include Columbus with Cam Boozer and those guys. And it'll also include Harvard Westlake again. So they're going to, right in December, we're going to know if they're that good. And if I got it right. And I think that was the main reason, is like Ani said, is having the great player who was an All-American as a sophomore, and then having the big games right away. They're going to, on a national stage, they're going to show if they're going to be in that level.
Nice. Okay. I like that. So before we move on to our next set of teams, just talk a little bit, share with our audience just the difference between the last few teams and the teams that didn't make our list. People are always wondering, well, what, puts the last 5 teams in and boots our team out. So just kind of give our viewers a little bit of insight of, how difficult it is, but also just what's the difference between maybe those last couple bubble teams.
Yeah. I'll jump on this, and Ani can follow up. We have some bubble teams, obviously. You can only put 50 in. And I think right now Chelsea is the teams with a track record, or a team that has a great player, team that plays a good schedule. Also, like I said, the state rankings, where the team finished last year and where the teams are going to play, especially early on. And then you got to look at a team like 47 Duncanville, who, would be behind South Grand Prairie. They got the track record. They got good players. They're a junior-oriented team. But, if they've been there, they're going to improve. I think with that being said, that's the main difference. I think there's going to be a lot of movement from 31 to 50 in terms of teams jumping in, and that's what we expect, especially at the bottom. Again, some of those teams are like, let's say, for instance, Mater Dei. Mater Dei is a nationally ranked. We have them at 42, but they might be 3rd or 4th in their league conference, which is the Trinity League, right? And same thing with Bishop O'Connell. We have 43. They might only be 3rd or 4th in that league with DeMatha, Gonzaga, Paul VI. So these are strong teams with strong leagues. So they could lose 3 or 4 conference games.
Right.
And then you obviously want to have a little bit of regionality. Chelsea, we don't want, it's not going to be like you have 9 teams from California and 9 teams from New Jersey. We do want to, it's supposed to be national scope. So we do want to have a little bit of regionality. That's why we might have a team like Totino Grace from Minnesota in there at 49. Best team in their state of Minnesota. Bellevue West was 24 last year. Awesome. They're going for their 5th straight state championship appearance at 48, Bellevue West. Again, you're not going to get too many Nebraska teams, so we want to kind of give some regionality there, especially them in like Idaho. Wow, a team from Idaho that's only been for our first 36 years of the FAB. We've never had a team from Idaho, and in the last few years, those teams are getting better. They have D1 players. They go out and play. They're coming to big events, so it's good to see teams like that from smaller states.
Ani, real quick, just give me one team that's on the rise before we round out this segment. One team that you think is going to surprise people this season.
I definitely think I'm gonna stay with my hometown. I mean home state. I think Duncanville is going to really surprise people. I know they lost a lot of guys from Cam Barnes, Ron Holland. I mean, the list just kind of goes on and on and on. It's about 7 guys that they lost. But they really picked it up, added some pieces like BJ Davis-Ray. Caden Edwards has taken the next step. He's a high major guard in 225. And then Cam Smith, Tyler Smith's brother that's at the G League Ignite. Cam Smith is going to be someone I think that's about to really get high major stuff going on with him. And he was really good in the wound camp. Me and Ronnie got to watch him. I think Duncanville's a team that they got to rely some on young guys coming off the bench. And when I say young, like 227s, freshmen. but and it's just some other guys that haven't had a lot of high-level varsity experience, but they're getting better. One thing that Coach Peavy's done a really good job is just playing a lot of fall league games to get guys a feel for it. So I think during the season, they're going to be a tougher team to beat than people realize. And I think they're going to shock people. I think they're going to rise. I think they're going to win. They have a chance to make it to the Final Four in the state, in state, and potentially win it. I mean, people haven't really talked too much about it, but they have a chance to really just kind of explode on the scenes, especially when it comes to like mid non-district games. I think that's when we'll start seeing them just rattle off wins, big win after big win after big win.
Nice. Yeah. I think that's a good answer. Ani's a Texas guy through and through, so it was expected, but definitely a good assessment. I want to move on to our next segment of teams. We have 16 through 30 coming up, but real quick, I just kind of want to remind all of our viewers to make sure that you share our Fab 50 Show YouTube link with Hoop fans. This season doesn't get started in every part of the country for another couple of weeks, so make sure you are, after you sign off, you check out our written version of rankings on ballislife.com. Share our show with high school hoop heads. It will be live on Ballislife Podcast Network, and it will be a valuable reference pretty much all month as we head into the high school season. So let's pull up our next set of teams. Teams 16 through 30. We'll get those rolling. A lot of familiar teams in this group. I want everybody to have a chance to look at it really quick. Some teams are definitely standing out to me. Let's start with you, Ronnie. Give me your first assessment of teams 16 through 30. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, just a high line. I see some teams here that are either defending state champs or very good, like Lincoln Park, number 22, with Malik Thomas out in Pennsylvania. Oak Cliff Faith Family has been on the cusp of the preseason Fab 50 for a while. Now they get in at 27. They're 2-time defending champs in their division in UIL Class 4A. Arizona Compass Prep, 16. Boy, but in that league in the NIBC, that being 16, that don't mean a whole lot. They got a lot of work to do. They lost, graduated a lot of guys, but they did get up to number 1 last year for a little while. If you guys remember, after our preseason, they started number 4 and they got up to number 1. So they got one player back, Jamari Phillips, but they got a whole new group. They're big. They did win a game at the Border League, but they lost in the semifinals. So they got some work to do. It's a good group of teams. I think the talent level is a little higher than what we saw in 31 through 50. Just bigger teams, a little bit more size. But again, there is some nothing's guaranteed for sure. And these are teams that can get into that top 5 to 10, Ani. Again, it'd be tough to crack number 1, but you just keep winning and that'll take care of itself. But they got some landmines with some, with their schedules. But I think the main thing is the talent level.
Yeah, and that was going to kind of be my next question, and I'll pose it to Ani. What is the difference between 16 through 30 and 31 through 50? If you could just give, a little bit of insight into how this next set of these next set of teams kind of separate themselves before we dive into some of these players and the teams themselves.
Yeah, I think depth definitely just when you look at these teams, I mean, they're just deeper as far as like when you go 31 through 50, you're talking about, they got other good players, but it's like one or two really highlighted guys. And then when you go into like 16 through 30, you're now looking at, or 31, you're looking at guys with 3, 4, 5, like mid to high major level prospects. I think the depth is just larger when you talk about the teams at this tier compared to 31 through 50. It's just there's just more Division I level prospects. Like Ronnie said earlier, I'm all about players, and talent's gonna win you basketball games, right? So when looking at these teams, I think you're just seeing just a higher level of depth that just at the end of the day is just going to play a big part when you talk about the second half of games.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so let's get into it. I want to start with Ronnie. I'm gonna put you on the hot seat a little bit. Let's start with the 28th ranked team, Oak Ridge out of Florida. You just touched on them a little bit. They have a stud in Jameer Jones. Talk to me about them.
Yeah, Oak Ridge, I guess it would be a little bit my team on the hot seat. They got 4 starters back. They're 4 Division I returning starters. But, with Jameer Jones and Oak Ridge, they got a new player coming in. And you see Jameer there. He was at IMG Academy last year. IMG lost some guys who were underclassmen, some guys that are not there no more. They're still a good team. But with him coming into the fold, it's just a matter of getting consistent. They won the GSSA in Georgia, June Scholastic event. Then they came out west to Section 7 and didn't do as good. So it's just a matter of getting them all together. They got Jalen Reese, the coach's son. Coach Reese, he's a Division I point guard. And they got very, good talent level, as Ani would say. And they got something to prove because being in that class, 7A in Florida, that means they're with Columbus, who we know will be towards the top of our rankings. And they got to prove they could beat them again. But look at their other guys: Elijah Elliott, Florida Atlantic; Cam Simpson going to Central Florida; Tyler Johnson, who was awesome last year in the games I saw, going to Virginia Tech. That's 5 high-level guys. So for them, they got the scheduling. It's just a matter of putting it together. Last year they lost on a buzzer beater in the state semifinals. So this year, they got some really big games. They're going to play Bishop O'Connell right away at the Holiday Hoops Giving in Atlanta, our guy Chris Williams' event. So we'll get a good feel, but they got to just do it at the end. And again, they're going to have to meet Columbus, I would assume, somewhere. I don't know how, as far as the districts meeting up, but they're going to meet them somewhere in the playoffs, and that'll be the game for them. Again, if they beat them in the game that matters, they'll obviously be really high in rankings.
Okay, so we have at number 19, we have St. John Bosco. Ani, I know you are high on their player, Brandon McCoy. So just give me a little synopsis on that team and how we kind of have them ranked where we do.
Yeah, I mean, they're, I got to see them in the Border League. You got Elsie Harrington, but more importantly, they got Elsie's a great player, high major prospect, but they got Brandon McCoy, who I believe is the top player in 226. And I think one of the may have the highest, I think has the highest upside. About 6'4", 6'5", can play either guard positions. He's skilled, talented, can create separation and score. He can really pass the basketball. As we see here, you see how he's just get into his phase, really change his speeds and get into his shots. This was against OTE, which has, more physical, older guys in this setting, and he really performed out here. I really like Brandon McCoy. I like his competitive nature. I like that even when he does struggle, he has a lot of energy and charisma and just keeps cheering on his teammates. And he's young. I think he doesn't turn 16 till maybe next year, or I think maybe next month. So there's a lot with him that just checks a lot of boxes. I mean, I'm not going to throw the P word, when we talk about just him as a sophomore, but boy, has all the makings of what we see at the next levels at guards. And I mean, you have a kid like him, you're going to be ranked that high.
Yeah. Nice. I'll
follow up on that. Chelsea, they got, basically their whole entire team back, 4 starters, 11 lettermen. So they're still a little young at certain spots. Like you said, Brandon McCoy is a 226, but they did it last year. They ended Mater Dei's league winning streak. We mentioned Mater Dei at 42 in the first group. They're in the same Trinity League. They're the defending champs. Modern Day won or tied the league title for 34 straight years. I mean, you guys weren't even born the last time Modern Day lost the league. So that team is really good. I mean, they got Brandon, but they're really well coached with Coach Matt Dunn, and they got Loyola Chicago commit Turner, the guard. They got good players. They got some good role players. So it is the players with them, as Ani mentioned, but they got the track record. They went to the sectional final, and they're right there on the cusp. They're trying to win the state open. So they check all the boxes in terms of the players and the resume.
Nice. Okay, so I just want to touch on one last team before we move on. I see at number 25, we have La Lumiere. Ani just gave us Brandon McCoy and his player to watch. Ronnie, I want to talk to you a little bit about your player to watch. I know he comes from that team, so just give our viewers a little bit what you think.
Yeah, Jalen Harrelson, ranked top 10 in 225 for La Lumiere. Again, La Lumiere has to, kind of show they can win in that NIBC. But I think with Jalen, they got a talent infusion, meaning a guy who can really do something that their players they haven't had recently can do. Look over the defense, control the ball as a big guard. They also got Jerry Easter. He's another good player. They got a really good 225 group. Chuck Love, top 50 player. Darius Adams, a top 20 player. And they got a good point guard from Ohio and Ace Buckner, a Clemson commit. But, their talent level is higher. They've been struggling with closing games in the NIBC. And I just think with Jalen, he just gives them a dimension, a big body guard that, he can attack, go inside. And they really haven't had that. I'll give you a crazy stat, and you guys it shows you how tough it is to win. La Lu was tied or led with 2 minutes to go in 6 of its 10 losses. And in 2 other ones, they were down by 2 with 2 minutes to go. So again, the fine line between winning and losing, they just didn't have the depth they just didn't have the depth and closing out the games to strengthen that league. But with Jalen, I think they got that. Again, that's a big difference. You're talking about a team that went, 19-10. If you win 4 of those games, you're now 24-6. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
You're winning or tied with 2 minutes to go in 6 and 10 of those games, and you lose. Whether that's to Oak Hill, Montverde, Sunrise, you're right there, but you got to close the game. So I think Jalen gives them a closer.
I like that. Okay, so team 16 through 30 seems like a pretty strong group. And to your guys' point, some of these teams, with a couple more wins could easily creep into the top 15. So it's going to be very interesting to see kind of what happens and who's able to move up. But before we get into our top 15, I kind of want to just talk about the guidelines and eligibility for how we, kind of come up with these rankings. So if we can pull that up, I'll start with you, I guess. Ronnie, talk to us a little bit about the FAB 50 guidelines.
Yeah, we talked about being in a league or conference, whether you're in a state association. If you're not in a state association, obviously if you're in a state association, you can be ranked. You mean you follow all the guidelines. They're supposed to do their job. That's what they get paid the big bucks for, to make sure these eligibility for these teams are right. Obviously, there's more than 50 state associations because some are broken up, private school and public school. Mm-hmm. Some states only have one. Some states have, like we mentioned, TAPS in Texas is private. California has private and parochial, public and private mixed together. So if you're not, you could be a governing body associate member. You gotta be certified by your state's Department of Education. League or conference membership is important. We talk about the NIBC. They do have some rules and regulations. Maybe they're slightly different. And I think the main one that Ani can touch on, and I want to spend a little bit of time on that perhaps, is just like maintaining amateur status. I think that's been one of the big things recently. We saw those Brandon McCoy highlights, Ani. They were playing against overtime elite. And that's kind of what we talked about in teams 31 through 50. Some of that depth has been taken from those teams because obviously the players are going to an NIBC teams or prep teams, or they're going to overtime elite. Overtime elite has a lot of players. Now, before we used to mention that you had to maintain your amateur status because, it seemed like a lot of players were going to turn pro, but that's kind of changed with NIL. Now, overtime elite has more of a, I guess, a quasi high school, or they're playing high school level teams, which when it first came out, it didn't seem like that was going to be. So we had some reservations, like, hey, guys are getting pro contracts. That's not high school players. So then some other basic ones are the 8-semester rule, Chelsea, which is obvious. You play 4 years of high school.
Mm-hmm.
There's some age cutoff guidelines. And those age cutoff guidelines are pretty lax, Chelsea. It's not like you can be 19. So it's not like it's real stringent, So we've talked about that. So I don't know, Ani, you have anything to follow up in terms of that? It's like, that line between amateur and players going to having more options, basically. They can go to, various leagues, various prep schools, and then even to the next level, as you mentioned, with like Ron Holland, there's a lot of options to go. You can go to Australia, NBL, like our guy from California, or you can go like Ron Holland, the G League route, and other guys with the G League route, like Mustelis from Sunrise.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options. You got Next Stars League in Australia. You got the Ignite. Some guys just do 2-year deals, like Dink Payton or drawing the blank, but the guard that's in the second year. OT, I've been out there a couple of times. Atlanta's like a third home for me. It's what they do there is really good, where kids are really getting developed, getting stronger and stuff like that. There's just a lot of options. So like you said, overtime elite, like imagine those guys being in high schools, and then we're talking about like the depth of it. But because there's so many options where kids can keep their amateur status, or maybe not, maybe go pro route, but still maybe make some money or however way it looks like. I mean, you can't blame them. That's really, it's like a fine line to it, especially when it comes to the rankings, but it definitely impacted some teams that maybe are in the bubble, or maybe are 31 to 50 that could have a kid that, maybe bolster them in the top 15. So yeah, it definitely is a fine line, but I think it's really impacted some of the teams that are in our rankings and are not in the rankings.
Yeah. Like, let's take a look at Kel with Peyton Marshall. He had a really good, awesome junior season, 7-foot center on him. Cal might be in there at 45, 46, 47 if he wasn't at OTE, right? A 7-footer, and they have good other players around him. Again, so you have that, and like you said, AJ Johnson, who played in the Ballislife game last year, that's the name I was thinking about. He went to the NBL, and like you said, some guys might leave early, like you mentioned. With Dink, he'd be at a high school. What high school was Dink at, Ani?
Pinkston.
Yeah, Pinkston. Yeah, you mean Pinkston can't win their district with that guy? I mean, possibly so. So again, the it's changing. But the thing is, like you said, I think for the elite players, NIL, even at the high school levels, kind of raise the bar, raise the expectations on Chelsea. These guys want to somehow get compensated. Some will legitimately get endorsements. And again, I'm not talking about Mikey and Ronnie. Those guys are
outliers.
They're outliers. They're not normal. You know what I mean? They're way outliers, kind of like Arch Manning. He's not normal. It's not a normal thing, but they're still looking for a situation where they can get, make some legitimate money. We've seen that at the college level. It's only trickling down to the high school level. I'll just give you real quick. Last year about this time, about 8 state associations allowed players to take NIL deals. Now we're up to like 33 or 34 in a year's time. It's only going to be a year longer for all 50 allow. You got to, because it's just all a kid's going to have to do is sue and say, hey, you're denying me of my rights to make a fair, honest, compensation for my name, image, and likeness. What's stopping me from doing this? Right. Again, maybe you can't use the jersey of like a Modern Day, or you can't use the jersey of a Duncanville Ani or a team like that, Marshall or Columbus, but you can still, it's the same thing with colleges. The colleges can't do that either. Angel Reese can't wear LSU jersey all the way around, but it doesn't matter. Who knows who she is. So there's no reason not to allow these players to do that. You just hope it's above board and they're really getting legitimate, endorsement deals, and they're learning what to do with it. I think that would be great if we can get to the education where players can know what to do with a little bit of this. For some of them, it's a significant amount of money. You just hope that somebody's puts it in some kind of, trust or some kind of something where, their finances are taken care of later.
No, absolutely. I think the landscape is changing. And, honestly, I'm happy for these kids. They're having more opportunities than I ever had as a player. So, it's exciting times. And, we'll just keep following like we've been to see, how things are changing. But really quick, before we get into our top 15 teams, I just wanted to remind everybody, instead of breaking down each team and bringing multiple guests on like we kind of have in the past, we're just highlighting some key teams and players. But just a reminder that we have very detailed write-ups on these players, on these teams on ballislife.com. So make sure you guys check that out. There's tons more insight that we kind of haven't got into on the show. So maybe there's a team that we missed and you want to hear about them. So just feel free to log on to ballislife.com and check that out. But let's keep it going. I want to pull up our teams 1 through 15 and kind of talk about our top teams. Let's get the list going. Montverde, of course, the top. Just give me your initial thoughts. I'll start with you this time, Ani. Initial thoughts on the top 15.
Most definitely. I mean, Montverde at number 1 makes a whole bunch of sense. Montverde and Link here. I see we have Prolific on here this year, and I have Ronnie expand on that. And we got to really I got to see some in the Border League. They're exciting team with AJ Dibanza, Tyron Stokes, and Darion Reed, who had a really good weekend there and is going to commit soon. But yeah, I mean, we talk about what's the difference between 1 through 15 and then 16 through 30 and then 31 through 50, like depth. My theme of depth continues to stand here. I mean, now we're talking about 3, 4, 5 in the last. Now we're talking about 7, 8, 9 Division I level prospects or scholarship level players in these scenarios. Columbus at 3, going to be really interesting to see how they are this season, adding Jace Richardson to them. But just looking at here, we're seeing larger levels of depths and teams that have won several seasons in a row and have rebuilt it pretty good.
Nice. What about you, Ronnie? Follow up.
Yeah, I think the size too. When you look at some of these teams, you look at like Long Island Lutheran. There's some of the size, and now they got a great player in BJ Edscom. But then you look at their size. You see players, God's Will Etherin, he's 6'9". They got guys like that coming off the bench. Some of these teams. Not all of them, but especially when you get into those NIBC teams, they got guys off the bench 6'8", 6'9", guys that may even play a little bit more as freshmen in college and start here. They got most of them got depth, or they got a really good player who's like basically a national player of the year candidate, Mr. Basketball USA. They've been there before, like Ani mentioned, they got the track record. Obviously, Montverde has the track record. They beat Columbus. Pretty good. Columbus came back in the second half of that Border League final. That's where we have them pegged 3. I think highlighting the difference between them and Link. Link has the big turnover on it. As we know, they got the good roster, but they had the big turnover last year, and they won the champion. They won it all. They won Geico, and they had a whole new team from 222. So I don't think for some of these teams the turnover is not big because they're used to it. Mm-hmm. So, but I think that was the main difference for me. Really close between 2 and 3. Link, they're the defending champs. They got a great player in Trey Johnson. They've already done the reload roster. And last year, Bill Armstrong, who's been on our pod before, he was in his first year. So that didn't matter. It didn't matter. He got it going right away. Again, he's a college level coach. A lot of these guys have been at the college level before. Sunrise Christian at number 14 has a new coach. And his coach has been at the college and NBA level for 8 years. The Kyle Lindstedt, he's been. Luke Barnwell's now at the staff at Texas Tech. So we say, oh man, they're going to have adjustment. Well, he's been at the NBA and college level for 8 years, and at Sunrise before. So I also think at this level, Ani, especially compared to 31 through 50s, these teams are approaching and practicing like a college team.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, when I noticed a lot of college coaches tell me that we like guys from these programs. Yeah, and some people, traditionalists, don't like it, but they're ready for college. Like you said, when you're practicing against another guy 6'9", 6'10" at your position, and you're playing your college position, that makes a big difference.
I can see that. I can see how that would definitely translate to the next level. Some of the guys that are going to get ready to step on a college campus in a year or so, are already going to have a little bit of experience. Let's get into a couple players with these top 15 teams. I'll start with you, Ani. Give me one player to watch that you're looking forward to.
You know what? It's Cooper Flagg. I mean, I know. Listen.
We know that.
I don't got to talk a whole lot about Cooper's game. We seen it, the dunking, the blocking shots. He's number one player 224. He's probably the best player overall in the country. Projected number one player in 225 draft. All that stuff. Yes, but for me, he's a player to watch because now he's taking the lead role at Montverde, and can he? I mean, we've seen it with Man United, but now can we see in the scholastic level at the NIBC? Can he lead Montverde? He's going to be the guy at Montverde and help them win the whole thing. I think and maintain that number one status. That's for me is why he's the player to watch. Is because we know the talent level. He deservingly is ranked where he's ranked. But can he now just take that next step in his role, right, in the scholastic level, in the NIBC, which is going to be loaded? And can he keep them at number one? Can they win the NIBC? Can they win Geico? That's something I do want to see out of him. I'm not saying if they lose it, that it's all on him, but I do want to see him in an increased role in this setting. So that's why he's my player to watch.
Well, of course you went with the obvious pick, but I'm not mad, Ani. That's a great assessment. What about you, Ronnie? Give me maybe a sleeper pick that people might not be as familiar with. Give me a player to watch.
Yeah, and this kid's not a sleeper per se because he's going to go to Big Blue Nation. I'm talking about recent Kentucky commit Boogie Fland for number 13 Archbishop Stafford. But again, he doesn't have Derek Queen around him. He doesn't have Robert Wright around him like Cooper. He's got young players around him. I seen them recently at the Pangos East Fresh Soft Camp, a bunch of good 226s. But being in New York, that's not easy. To win that Catholic League title in New York, it's very difficult. And Boogie's going to have a big season and scoring, leading, doing what is necessary for that team at number 13. They have some, like I said, they got Danny Corbucci as a 225. They got one good piece up front who's a senior, Braylon Ripto, but they got a bunch of good young players. And Boogie's really, he was at 17.9 last year, 4.2 rebounds, 3.7. I think that's going to have to go up with Ian Jackson now leaving the Catholic League. Our guy Ian Jackson, he's not our savior. It's kind of Boogie's show to take. And at number 13, again, they're right there, but they got to play Corona Centennial. They got to play Perry, who we talked about at 33 at Hoop Hall West. And they got to play Montverde at the college City of Palms a little bit later. So when Hoop Hall West in late November, first week of December will give us an idea of if they have a chance against Montverde. If they beat Perry, beat Centennial, they'll have some momentum going into that City of Palms, which starts on December 18th, and that's just a loaded tournament all the way around. But I like Boogie because it's a lot on him. Where it's like you mentioned about Cooper, Derek Queen could be a National Player of the Year candidate. Robert Wright's terrific. And they got the size and even our guy Ian McNeely. Ani, he's a great player. He can be an All-American, but for Boogie, he has to play like an All-American for Stepanak to do good. And I think that's last year we talked to Ian and over at when he was at Cardinal Hayes, and when we saw them, Ani, they didn't work. They didn't play to not Ian, but the whole team didn't rise to them, and you can see that their games they weren't in the big games, and that's where our guy Boogie's really going to have to, lead that team and win the close games.
So our top 15 seems to be super competitive. A lot of tough games ahead. It's going to be very interesting to see who's able to maintain their position. But based on, upcoming games, I want to talk a little bit about team on the rise. I'll start with you, Ani. Is there any team in this top 15 that you think has the ability to move up maybe significantly? Maybe not so significantly, but still has the ability to maybe, move up a couple spots. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think Prolific Prep, when you look at that team, I mean, they're just so loaded. I mean, I know they took a pretty good beating from that Columbus squad, but it's preseason. It doesn't matter. But when you look at AJ Dibansa, Tyron Stokes, Darion Reed, that's a team that just off those three alone, and then Zoom Diallo, Mikey Lewis. I mean, that's a loaded squad. They got a chance to be a number one team in the country I mean, they're that talented. So they're a team that I feel like can be on the rise. I think even though AJ's gone from 26 to 225, I definitely still think, assuming this new role of being like the guy, like, you know, more eyes are on him this year. So I definitely think that once he kind of gets more comfortable in that role, he's going to be really, really good. I think this prolific team is going to be dangerous this year. I think when they're really hidden, I think they're going to look like the best team in the country. That's just my honest opinion.
Oh, wow.
But when they're, you know, they're going to maybe struggle a little bit early, but I think once they get into their groove, I think they really got a chance. I'm not saying, I mean, to be number one, you can't have a lot of losses now. Like I'm aware of that, but I do think that they're going to really hit stride pretty soon. And I really love Darion Reed's game. That's my first time really getting to watch him. I think he's someone that can kind of be a closer type, especially in the end of games. And Tyron's just such a dog. I mean, such a dog in 226, kind of plays older, has more mature game than listed as a sophomore. So I definitely say Prolific Prep, in my opinion, is a team on the rise that has a chance to be number one just off the talent level.
Oh, wow. Okay. What about you, Ronnie? You have a team in mind?
Yeah, my team would be Myers Park, number 15. They were a bubble team last year. They were right outside, but the Mustangs are very good. You know, North Carolina High School Athletics Association. They won the 4A title, first state title since 1966. They got two big-time players, and really three. Sir Muhammad, Nazir Muhammad's son, Notre Dame commit. They got Sadiq A.J. White. He's a, you know, underclass All-American from last year. And Bishop Boswell, who's going to point guard. You know, you got to have a good point guard. He's going to Tennessee. That's really three great players. 9 lettermen back. Muhammad averaged about 13.5 points. They're really balanced. White about 11.5, and Boswell 12 points. He scored 22 points in the state title game. And more things, Boswell played really good D on Paul McNeil, who's now at North Carolina State. And this team has a really good chance. You know, again, will they get to number one? I'm not really sure. I'm not going to go that far, you know, but they got some depth. Elijah Strong moved on, but they got John Hines at 226. They got some guys with a football background. And Myers Park's got a loaded schedule. They're going to be at the DC Hoop Fest December 9th through 10th. They're going to be at the John Wall Invitational, which is always a good event and tournament after Christmas. I just think they have a chance to move up there just with their, you know, 3 big starters back, 9 lettermen. They won. They know what it takes to win that North Carolina state title. And they just have, you know, some of those teams are going to fall. Again, we got 8 teams from the NIBC in the top 25. So they all can't. They deserve it because of their talent level. But, you know, again, when you're 5th or 6th in conference, you're going to drop. And we can't expect a team like Stepanak or Myers Park, you know, even Gonzaga at number 12 to really drop. You know, if you 4, 5, 6 losses, you're going to drop. So I don't really think all those 8 teams are going to stay there. They're deserving of those preseason accolades, but that's a team, Myers Park, that has a chance. That they got to be more, you know, they got to be more in the range. And I'll say what their record is last year. You know, last year in 223, they were 28-4. So if they're like 27-1-2, that's where I'm saying. So that, you know, again, you get to the point where how do you rank a team that's like in the NIBC now 5 or 6 losses versus one of those teams that only has 1? So you know, again, as Ani mentioned, a couple of these teams can take a few losses, but to get to number 1, you can't take too many.
Makes total sense. Before we wrap up our, you know, top 15, I just want to kind of touch on 2 teams that stood out to me that we've kind of talked about their players a lot on past shows. At number 3, Columbus, and also at number 11, Harvard Westlake. They have some stud players on each team. I'll let you guys pick which one you want to handle, but I just want to give a little insight to our viewers about some of the studs that they have playing and the chances of their team kind of moving to number 1. So I'll start with you, Ani. Talk to me about Harvard Westlake and Trent Perry.
Yeah, you know, Harvard Westlake, again, that was another team that I got to really watch while in my time in Vegas. Trent Perry, really good player, guard, can really make shots, just knows how to play, crafty. You know, just he's a competitor. He's a competitor, as we see here, shouting at the fans after made 3. I just really like his shot making, his just 3-point, just shooting prowess, which is able to space the floor out. And, you know, he has some pieces around him. I don't know how to say the kid's last name very well, but Kamania, I know he's not on the clip, but he's got to see him in wound camp as well. Just really talented, about 6'7", skilled, kind of like this point forward-y, like just versatile threat that can just score with pull-ups, shooting, left, right hooks. And I think he's a good complementary piece with Trent Perry. And I just think like Harvard Westlake has a chance, to potentially move up. I think they got some size. They got some quality size. They got some shooting, not only with Trent, but with some other guys around them. And they also just got some mismatch guys that they can kind of go to when, the offense isn't really going as well. You can throw the Kamenia and you can get some easy looks. That's why I really like about Harvard Westlake and what I like about Trent and just the pieces that are around him.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to watch Trent, I think either last summer or the summer before he was playing for Vegas Elite. Vegas girl. So just, my shameless plug. But he was super exciting, super fun to watch. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. But it wouldn't be a show if we didn't talk about the Boozer brothers or the Boozer brother in Cameron Boozer. So Ronnie, I'll let you take it, but talk to me about number 3, Columbus out of Florida.
Yeah. Well, like we mentioned Oak Ridge, they went to that Section 7 and they got good players. But I mean, Columbus just spanked everybody. Spanked them. I mean, like we can talk about Cooper, we can talk about AJ and Master, but I mean, it's not very often you get a player like Cam, like right now. I think again, I'll go on the spot and say right now, if I want a high school win, forget 10 years in the NBA. Now, I want Cameron Boozer right now. If I just want to win a high school game, you know what I mean? Like he's just dominant. You see him there. He has kind of like an NBA body now. You see his brother there on the dish. He can shoot the 3. He's doing that a little bit more. He can handle the ball, but you don't even need him to do that. I mean, he's really like a high school Paulo Banchero. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these shoulders are that wide. He's that big. They got a few new pieces in Jason Jackson Richardson. And it's funny, Chelsea, you mentioned Harvard Westlake. Well, Harvard Westlake, again, they lost to Prolific really by a couple possessions. So that's why Harvard Westlake's 11 as a defending, state champion in California. Well, Columbus is a 2-time defending state champion, and they're going for the national, the whole thing, right? They really have a chance, really good chance to finish number 1. Obviously, they got to win that City of Palms. But when you talk about being again, I have this panel that puts together the Mr. Basketball. They've done it for a long time. They're not really going to give a sophomore very much leeway or love. Like, sure, some sophomores have been in the mix, whether they're Monty Bates, now senior's better, but like to him to win national player there as a sophomore, like that's pretty amazing. Like I don't think it's talked about enough. Like how many times has a high school national player there come back to high school? What, 3 times maybe? Lou Alcindor, LeBron, and him. Like it's really a small group. So like he's kicking at, like he's punishing teams. Even at the border league, he's still punishing. Like he's just so strong and good and agile at this level. And again, we'll see if they can meet down the line. And then we talk about the schedule. So Columbus, right away, Ani, you're going to get the matchup you want. November 22nd, they're playing Prolific. So again, AJ, you want to be number 1 in 225. Like this is another chance you got because you didn't really show at Border League that you were better than Boozer right now. Again,
No, you didn't.
The NBA draft is something different. Obviously, we're going to have our draft show next June 2/24. But for right now, I want Cameron Boozer if I want to win, and they have a great chance to win. 4 starters, plus they got the Bishop Gorman boys. Our guy who just committed at Bishop Gorman, ironically, to Michigan State, where his dad is going, or his dad played for. Richardson, and his younger brother. We haven't talked about Jackson, so that gives them another piece. They got good shooters. They got Benny Flagella, and then they have another great guy who I think is going to continue to get more publicity, and he hasn't been taught too much. We've seen Amani Malik Abdulali, 6'7", 224. He's just terrific off set lobs, set plays, out of bounds plays, and then Columbus again. So they get by. Let's say they beat Prolific again. Just playing devil's advocate here. They're number 3. They play McEachern down at Hoopsgiving in Thanksgiving weekend, the 24th, and then right away we'll see, the whole country will see because it'll be on national TV. They get their chance at Montverde. They go up basically what freeway's that. Rick Ross always talks about it, but anyway, they go up the freeway to play Montverde from Miami on December 1st. So right away, the rankings are going to take care of itself. So you have these rankings we're putting out here basically on Halloween. It's going to be Halloween, and you got about a few weeks to dive into them, read them, go back to them. But that's all great and dandy, Chelsea. Get into the rankings on ballslife.com. But more, the rankings are going to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Monverde's playing Columbus on the 1st. They're playing Link on the 8th in Vegas as far as the NBA play-in. What is it? The Cup tournament. So there's some high school synergy there. So there's going to be high school teams in Vegas that weekend, which is part of that NBA in-season cup, I'll just call it. I don't know the exact name of it.
But play-in tournament,
play-in tournament. So, we're going to get some people are going to get to watch some high school teams. So, like, Link is 2. They're playing number 1 on 12-8. Columbus is playing 1-3 on 12-1. It's all going to take care of itself. We're just kind of breaking them down. And like you said, it's harder to get against the Boozers. Again, I know Montverde probably has player for player, matchup by matchup, a slightly better team, but Columbus definitely has their chances. They were kind of shocked in that first half of that Border League game, Ani. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that a little more, but they kind of put it together. They made it interesting enough to say, hey, this team has a chance.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ani.
No, I said they definitely made it interesting. And when you look at Columbus, just the way they play, like just, with Cam Boozer, one thing that Ronnie has talked about in the past, but like, he just gets in just those outlet passes. Like they just get quick buckets because he just makes those passes advancing easy layups. Now they make it interesting. Columbus is going to be tough against anybody. I know they just played OT again, which we saw OT. I mean, that was tough. They went out to the area and they made it very, very competitive. I think I agree with Ronnie, and I'm with him with Cam. I'm with him with Cam. I think Cam, if you had to say who's right now, who do you want to win a high school game right now? I'm picking Cam Boozer.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Cooper for a minute, because as we're shooting the show, he was going to, I think, commit or come close. He was going to make his commitment, and Montverde is going to play in his hometown in Maine. Obviously, Maine hasn't really had a McDonald's type Americans. Now, this is not just a normal McDonald's All-American. Like, this guy's like the best player in the country, dang near, if it ain't Cam Boozer. And, for him, for a tragedy to happen, there's a big shooting in Maine. He kind of got on social media and talked about, hey, Maine, we love you guys. We're thinking about you. And Montverde obviously has that loaded schedule, but they're going to play 2 games in Maine this year. On January 5th, 6th, I believe, right around the. Correct. Just talk a little bit about that, and Ani, and just like for him to go back home and play in front of his fans, and then it's going to have more meaning because of off-court tragedy.
Yeah. Real quick, Ani, and just so our people are following, the tragedy that Ronnie is speaking of is just the mass shooting that happened in Maine recently. I believe the shooter is still out on the loose. They haven't been able to detain him. And so I just wanted to just kind of make sure our viewers are aware, and they should be aware because, it's all over the news and stuff like that. But obviously another mass shooting, senseless gun violence in the United States, it kind of doesn't end. So, prayers to those families, the victims, everybody affected in that tragedy. Cooper Flagg has been very vocal, just, shouting his stay out on social media. So I just kind of wanted to make sure everybody knew what that was. Go ahead, Ani.
Yeah, no, him coming back to Maine and playing some big games like that, I think that's awesome. I think there's going to be a lot of emotion there, especially when you talk about, what's going on in Maine right now with the active shooter. I mean, I know it's October, but even coming in January, people are going to want to. The residents out there are going to want this. This is going to be important for them to really see their hometown kid in this, and there's not going to be a whole lot of things that just going to really. That just lifting him up right now. You see what I'm saying? So I think it's just a lot of emotions there. I think it's really good that he can come back and play a couple games in front of his home crowd. And again, I'm going to be interested to see how does he perform. I know he's going to be energized. I know he's going to be motivated. But as we can see, guys, him balancing those things and still putting out a good performance and still, going out there and winning, which Cooper, he's a mature kid. I got to interview him a few times. He's a mature kid. But I'm just interested to see those things, with all those, all these things that can kind of come into play. How does he perform? How does he, just do winning basketball plays? but also, put a show on to the fans that really going to want that.
Yeah. Let me follow up on that. Like we mentioned Boozer and like he is the guy now, like you said, his accolades, his 25 points a game. Like the ceiling for this Montverde team and for Cooper especially is like really high. Like I wanted to mention that because I had him on my All-American team last year. There was a few sophomores, which is not happens often, but Malik Thomas was on there, him, Cole Pete, 4 sophomores. And if you look at Cooper, he only averaged 9.9 points a game. It's not like, he had the blocks. It wasn't like he averaged 30 points a game is my point, So like you said at the top of the show, more Ani, like he can really lead this team. He can have some monster games. And then, so his ceiling is just to dominate and get this team rolling is really high, especially if they start winning these games. I think it's going to really motivate them. Again, McNeely was their leading scorer at about 12.4 points a game. They obviously got bounced. They don't need guys scoring 25, 30 points. Atsanul, he just committed, right? Ani and most teams, he's the best player, right? He's going to Georgia. He only averaged 6.6 points a game. So they play as a team. That's why, they've been able to win the big games. But I think Cooper really has a chance to be that standout guy where he can take it to the next level and challenge Boozer for player of the year or whoever else comes in. I don't think that's far-fetched to think. Ani, let's move ahead. Let's go crystal ball real quick. Let's say they do win these games. So Montverde beats Link, they beat Columbus, they beat Wasatch to start the season. Like, then are you going to be starting ready to, let's say they're 24-1 or 25-0 or something like that? Are you going to start being ready to compare them to that 1920 team with Cade and with Cade and our Scotty Barnes and them? Or no? Let this team do. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No. Okay,
No.
Let them win.
Man, that group with Cade and them, and Scotty Barnes,
Deron,
man, there was like, that was a different group. That was the best high school team I've ever seen. So, yeah, that was for me personally. I know I'm just 31, but I haven't seen a high school team that good. This team has a chance of being pretty damn good. I mean, if they do that, I think they'll be in the conversation. But
that's still a ways off.
Yeah, they ain't touching that group. they ain't touching that group, nah.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the kids. I think it was at the Wooten camp. One of the media outlets was like, "What do you guys think about Chino Hills versus Montverde?" And they're like, "Oh, that's Cade's team." Like, "Oh, that's Cade's team by a mile." Like, what are you talking about? And I think that's what we're saying. When you look at that Chino Hills team, they were a great team, no doubt about it. But they had 2 14-year-olds. Yes, those 14-year-olds are in the NBA now, but they were 14. You know what I mean? Like 2 14-year-old stars. And I think that's where Cam Boozer makes a difference in some of these games. And they're just so strong physically. And then Richardson's, I think they're being slept on a little bit. If they're healthy, that Gorman team just didn't come together last year. They split up. Obviously, some of them are at Wasatch now. Junie Mobley with number 23 Wasatch, they got a good team. Chris Newley's there, and they also got the kid from Durango who committed to San Diego State. He's also there. So like Wasatch has some boys, they're still only they might finish 4th or 5th in the league. We'll see, but I'm to your point, but like the strength, the physical strength, I think that's another big difference in teams 1 through 15. You don't see that too much in teams. Like 40 through 50 or something. Like these teams are really big and really strong. So I was laughing and everybody was saying, what? Oh, Cade and them are going to win. So if you guys want to know more about that or get into that more, we don't have time for that on this special episode, but go to Spotify or iTunes, our episode in the paint 62. We talked to Steve Bate. We talked to Kevin Boyle. We talked to Steve Smith, and we talked to Herman Harried, who was a player on the 1983 Baltimore Dunbar team. So we broke all that down. Go watch that old episode 62. It's all there. We don't have time. Chelsea, we got to move forward. and keep this going. But we have talked about all the teams, one through the segment of teams. Ani, real quick, any other team you want to touch on in any of the groups or anything that stands out? I know, this is, again, teams 31 through 50. There's going to be a lot of movement. Again, those teams are little. I'll be honest. I'm going to be completely honest here. Those teams are weaker than they were 10 years ago. Again, there's kids, they're at the G League at night. Put Dink Pate on Bellevue West or South Grand Prairie.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They'd be stronger. There's no doubt about it. Let's just take those OTE kids and put them somewhere. They're going to be better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ani, any other thoughts on those on the teams in general?
Teams in general, definitely San Antonio Brennan. I know we have him at 30. I like him a lot too. Kingston Flemings has really kind of propelled himself as one of the best point guards in the country. They got Isaiah Ward 226, and they're a team again. They're like South Grand Prairie. Like they did make it to the Final Four of the of 6A last year. But those guys are a year older, so just really interested to see how they go. 30 is a good number, but it's 30s like that ranking where really good, it's really hard to move up from 30 to 20, but it's easy to go down because they are going to have a tougher non-district schedule. So it's interesting to see how this, like with Kingston and Isaiah and some of those other guys, how they just really just kind of come in and play. When they get in the district, they should be fine. San Antonio's not that great. It's not that strong, but that non-district schedule, I'm really interested to see how they all just kind of how they play. And then for me, we talked a little bit about it. Wasatch, I like him. Isaiah Harwell, Chris Noelli, John Mobley. I think this is probably maybe in my opinion, one of the best teams that they've had in a while from a talent perspective. Not saying they'll win NIBC, but I definitely think some of the games that they lost close last year or in some years prior, they have the talent enough to close it this year. So it's more of those two teams I'm interested to see how they just perform in their like Brennan non-district and Wasatch and just those NIBC close 1-2 possession games. Can they close out more of those games than they've done in the past? From a talent level, it shows that they can, but they got to play on the floor. Yeah,
as Chelsea mentioned, some of those guys all play together with Vegas Elite, so they got some continuity. Like we talked to Goreville, we talked about him going to San Diego State, Chris Nooley, Ani Malik Diallo going to TCU. I might have said his name wrong. He's the returner. He's their only returner, 6'10". That gives them the size. Again, I think the depth, they're going to have to show that, like you said, that they have the depth to compete with Link, Montverde, game in and game out. But they got the team. Coach Peterson does a really good job. And then jumping back to Brennan, my thing with them, Ani, is the youth, as you mentioned. It's can go either way, but also 21 years since the team from San Antonio has won the top division in Texas. At then it was 5A. There was no 6A in 2002, 21 years ago. I think it was San Antonio Jay. So that's history. You got to get over that hump. Teams from San Antonio, once you start playing them boys from the Fifth Ward and the boys from Dallas, you got to do it. You got to do it.
But you know what? They're tough. They're tough enough to do it. They are tough enough to do it. And Cody Cowgill's crazy. He's a crazy coach. He makes sure them boys come to play. It's gonna be hard. But the perception of San Antonio schools and players, they're on the softer side. They're not soft. they're not soft.
San Antonio.
They got some. It's Centex period, awesome, but they're not soft. That's the one thing I get. That's why I feel like they have a really good chance because they are one of the tougher teams I've seen in the area.
Great, that's great. Yeah, real quick on team 27, Faith Family. They're not in the 6A, so you got Brennan at 30. You got South Grand Prairie 45, Duncanville. They're in the top division. This Faith move, boy, they got a tough schedule. They're playing a lot of teams. What do you make of them real quick? They're number one in Texas, but again, they're not in the top division, but they're going to have their chances to be ranked really high.
Yeah, BT always gives them a really strong non-conference schedule. I think this year is probably tougher than last year or right equivalent. When you talk about Dorian, just that big man inside that can just score it in the post whenever he wants to, Colorado commit. Then you have Isaac Williams, who's another Division I guard that about 6'3", athletic, strong. You have Jazz Henderson in there, who just he's a winner. He's a guard that can really just control the pace of the game, manage the game, just a real floor general out there. Lamont Hatfield's a 225 lefty, that shooter that has a Division I. I think he could be like a mid-major level player, could be higher if it all clicks. LaKendrick Taylor's another bouncy 4-man, 4-5 that can just, protect the rim. And then they got Davion Atkins, who's 226. And that, to me, when we talk about these non-district schedules, because when they get in a district and state, I mean, I know they have Dallas Carter, but there's little resistance for them getting into state. But when you talk about those tough non-district schedules, I think guys like Davion Atkins, who's a 226, that has a chance of being a 4-star, maybe borderline 5-star level player, he's going to be important for them to win those games, along with Dorian and Jazz and Isaac. They got to do their part. But I definitely think there's some younger guys that will have to play an increased role and make it happen. But from a town perspective, they're the best team in the state of Texas, and BT's they're always going to win. I think for them to really take that leap from the second tier in the rankings to, maybe a top 15 team, they're going to have to win those games in non-district. They got to win state. They're probably going to do that.
They got to win state.
Obviously. Yeah, but they got to win some of these really tough non-district scheduled games.
I'm looking forward to seeing them playing in Torrey Pines again. They've won. They went there a few years ago and played Bishop Gorman in a good final, and I think Waxahachie will be there as well. Now they're not ranked, but I think that leads us into our next topic here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them, and hopefully you can make it out, Ani, after Christmas. There's, I think, 3 Texas teams down in San Diego this year, and obviously Faye Family will be one of the teams that might win that tournament.
Yeah, let's touch on that a little bit. As our top 50, list kind of comes to a close, let's talk about a couple of the teams that were on the bubble that maybe didn't make it. We touched on that a little bit at the beginning of the show, just how it's difficult to even just rank teams in general. And you have those teams kind of on the back end that, maybe could have went either way or could be swapped out with some teams that didn't make the top 50. So, Ronnie, I'll kind of just start with you. Do you have any teams that you can just kind of pinpoint that, could have been maybe in this list and might have a chance to creep in as the season goes on?
Yeah, as we get ready to pull up that list, a couple teams stand out for me. Again, we kind of mentioned them. Sunny Slope, Arizona, very good team. They're right on the cusp of getting in those rankings. Again, some of the people feel they're better than Perry, but they in the fall league, they showed that they got a bunch of young players, so they still got work to do in terms of beating the strong teams. They're going to have they're playing the schedule. They even got a great 227 in the big man, 6'10" Wabbington. He's a really good young player, and I just like their team. Vashon of Missouri. Again, I personally think they're going to get in the rankings because they're, again, a team that might be 3rd or 4th in their state or 3rd or 4th in their conference. Vashon has got some really good 225s. Coach Irons always does a good job there. I wasn't quite ready to put them in, but I personally think they're going to jump into the rankings at some point. So I think they're very strong. Them or Chaminade is very, very good. And, all these teams. So, yeah, those 2 teams stand out to me. Again, I can mention Desert Mountain with the House Boys. Again, those are younger teams out in Arizona. And Sunny Slope got some younger teams. So, again, Ani, it goes back to the Boozer, Darren Peterson level. If Koa Pete is that good, he should be leading that team. So, again, if even though they lost Coach Williams to Colorado, if Perry's that good, they play the schedule. That's why I started them number 1. But I wouldn't be surprised if Sunny Slope and or Desert Mountain get in there with them right in the mix in that Arizona Open Championship.
Nice. Ani, do you have any teams that stand out to you on this list before we move on?
Yeah, no, Waxahachie. We haven't really got to see them in the fall with King Grace and Parker Jefferson, both 225 national ranked guys, high major prospects. They kind of been chilling a little bit on the fall leagues. So I think seeing what they look like during the season with both of them on there, and even without them, the team's been looking pretty good. They got some other guys like Trey Nunn, 226, that can really shoot it, and it's like a thicker body wing. But Waxahachie is going to be interesting to see. Last year, they kind of struggled. I think, again, we talked about youth, and youth last year played a role in just how they just struggled. They probably didn't play up to par to what people thought they could. But this year, I think now that they're a year older, chemistry's kind of just been growing more and more, and they're sharing the basketball. I think Waxahachie has a chance to be in that top 50 from a talent level. And then you got two high major guys that can, really score whenever they want to. And Parker, who's just a matchup problem in the post, and Trey, who can really space the floor, and King, who can score whenever they want. I think Waxahachie has a chance to be in that top 50. But their district and non-district schedule is going to be tough. So, but yeah, from a time perspective, they have a chance to get in.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so we have our completed Fab 50 up on ballislife.com. So I just kind of wanted to remind the viewers after the show, make sure you go check out those detailed write-ups of each team, everything from key players, insights to why they landed in the spot that they did, even down to their schedule. And as we wrap this up, I kind of just want to talk to you guys about games to watch. You already pinpoint we have a lot of matchups with the top teams, but maybe there's a couple other games that our viewers should look forward to. Ronnie, I'll start with you. Any big games you see in the future that, our viewers are not going to want to miss?
Oh, yeah. There's definitely some games that our viewers are not going to want to miss. We kind of mentioned them a little bit, but again, I said right away, Prolific and Columbus, November 22nd. It's not on that list, but watch before Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. The Thanksgiving Hoops Fest is always good. There's going to be some good matchups down there. Columbus has got McEachern down at the Holiday Hoops Giving in Georgia. And then we get into the big ones. On national TV, everybody will see Montverde and Columbus if they want to on December 1st. And then right away, Link is playing Prolific Prep, Ani. So Prolific Prep, win or lose that game on the 22nd, they're going to have to bounce back. They're playing Link. I believe that game's at the Derek Smith Shootout. Yes, I believe that game is December 2nd in Kentucky. And then Montverde gets their chance at Link. We mentioned those Vegas games. I don't know the complete schedule in Vegas, but I'll be there to watch that game. It could potentially be 1 and 2, but may not be 1 and 2 because, again, based on the rankings, I'll put them out after Thanksgiving. It could be 1 versus 4, 1 versus 2 versus 3, depending. And then, Ani, I'll kind of let you mention some of the ones on the later in the season. But those 2 games that are on the 12th and the 18th, that's part of the City of Palms.
Yeah, no, that Columbus and Lehigh game, I'm interested to see that as well. I'll actually be there in that Link Academy versus Prolific game. I already got my ticket to Kentucky. Actually, my first time being in Kentucky, so it'd be interesting. But yeah, that Columbus and Lehigh, I think that'll be a really high level matchup. You can talk about multiple high major players into that setting, and Montverde and Prolific Prep on January 14th. I think Prolific going into January, obviously, hopefully, they're a lot better than what we saw in that game against Columbus, but they're going to be a lot better come January. Those late December, early mid-January is where teams start to peak. So I think you're going to see really good games with Columbus and Lehigh, and then Montverde and Prolific. I think those are going to be really good games because I think everyone's really kind of hitting their stride, and they are who they are at that point. So I think I agree that those early December, I think teams starting to figure out who they are. Link County, North Mecklenburg, it's going to be a really good game. IMG Richmond Heights is going to be a really good game. But I think those January games, I think that's where their identity's set, right? Yeah. And now they're really playing into who they are. So I'm excited about those 2 January games.
Yeah, those are obviously at Hoop Hall, the Spalding Hoop Hall Classic in Springfield, Massachusetts. It's always nice to mention the ones that do the Springfield double. So go from the Bass Pro in Springfield, Missouri, which is a great event, 15,000 people there. They love their basketball, and then go over to Springfield Monday. So you play the championship Saturday, or in the championship day is Saturday. Mm-hmm. Travel Sunday, play MLK Monday. So that would be Paul the 6th. They're doing it this year. So they're at the DC Hoop Fest, number 5, Paul the 6th, who's the top team right now we have in the WCAC there in Washington, D.C. area, DMV. They got to do it. They are in that Bass Pro with quite a few good teams. Bass Pro will also include number 19, St. John Bosco, number 34, Edmond North, number 21, McEachern. So that's 4 nationally ranked teams. So Paul VI is going to have to, see if they can win that game and then jump over to on their plane and then go play in that event on Monday. And I'll give the rundown real quick if I can pull it up on that Monday. You got McEachern as well going to do it Monday, January 15th. Let's say they play Paul in that championship game on Saturday. They're playing Harvard Westlake, so that's 21 versus 11. Then you got Paul playing Columbus, so that's 3 versus 5. Again, that may not be the ranking then. That could be 2 versus 1. We don't know. We don't know yet. And then you got Compass Prep playing Long Island. And Long Island, as you mentioned, Ani, has that game against Columbus. So Columbus has 2 big games on the 13th. Take Sunday off, play the 15th, and then Lynx playing IMG. So everybody likes watching those games on that 15th or that Monday. And to be honest with you, everybody should really be doing a little bit more to talk about Martin Luther King Jr. That's really what the games are all about, right? I mean, the Dream Classics started years ago, Pango's Dream Classic 20 years ago, and then it kind of morphed in away from that day. And then now it's just like a celebration of that whole weekend. But that event is big. And again, doing that Springfield double is huge. I remember Montverde had their a really good team that won the championship. They had D'Angelo Russell and Ben Simmons was coming onto the team as a sophomore. And they lost those 2 games. They lost to Paul in the championship game at Bass Pro. And that's a hard thing to do. And then they came back and played Finley, and Nigel Williams-Goss hit a 3-pointer at the buzzer. I just remember it really, really well. So those games are hard. So Paul's got their work cut out for them. Whoever's doing that double's got their work cut out for them. All these teams that are playing these national schedules, it's just so much different than 15 years ago. Again, we mentioned this MLK weekend has become really big. And really the weekend right before the McDonald's votes have to be turned in, and then right before the McDonald's gets announced. And then also Thanksgiving weekend has become really big. Ani, I know you like that. It's like right away we're on it. Thanksgiving weekend wasn't really that big 15 years ago. It was kind of like leading into the holiday tournaments. But the rankings are going to take care of themselves, Chelsea. I know. I guess as we're getting close to wrapping up, especially early in the season, it's great to go over them. But like, what's important is what happens on the court.
No, absolutely. Our rankings are set. The stage is set for a lot of the players that we talked about to just have an opportunity to lead their teams. So maybe that will lead to a number 1 spot, maybe not. Time will tell, and we'll definitely be following throughout the season. Ronnie, I'll let you talk about a little bit about what's next. Maybe our next updated poll.
Yeah, let's just close out by talking about what's next. Obviously, go to ballislife.com and check out all the rankings. But what we got coming up is the regional rankings. We obviously, those teams that were on that bubble graphic will be in there. That's November 7th. The 5 regions: the West, Southwest, which includes Texas, Arkansas. It's a little cheating there a little bit. And then we got the Southeast, which has really always been really strong: Georgia, the Carolinas, Florida. The Eastern Seaboard, obviously no explanation needed, and the Midwest, which is like Ohio, Illinois, that group of teams. So the 5 regions, which I've had for a long, long time, those regional rankings will come out on the 7th. Then a lot of people are interested to see, like we mentioned, we got the National Player of the Year back. Is he going to be the leading vote getter in the Mr. Basketball Tracker? I don't know. Some people might say Cooper Flagg is in that top spot. The regional leading into that Mr. Basketball would be November 21st. And then the first regular season FAB 50 will be right after those Thanksgiving big events on November 27th. So that will kind of get us through November and then take us into December. So the 7th for the regionals, Mr. Basketball USA preseason tracker, 21st, and first in-season rankings, the 22nd.
Nice. Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning into this special edition episode of the In the Paint Show. We are going to recap our top 50 teams, but they're also on ballislife.com for you to check out. I know we didn't get to talk about every single one, but each team is featured on the website. So make sure you check out those write-ups. The tab should be at the top. Everything is live now. Good luck to all the teams that we mentioned today, especially those on the bubble. Hopefully they can creep into the rankings. I know Ronnie and Ani don't exactly always get it right all the time. So I'm excited for, for the rankings to come out, for them to maybe be wrong. But we'll see. We'll see next week on the next episode.
Thanks, guys.